Emily stood at the doorway of her daughter's bedroom, clutching the frame as if it were the only thing holding her up. The room smelled faintly of lavender, the scent of Lily's favorite bedtime spray. The neatly arranged bookshelf still held her most cherished fairy tales, their spines worn from countless nights of storytelling. A stuffed bunny sat on her pillow, its ears slightly bent from being hugged too tightly. Everything in the room screamed of her presence, yet she was gone. Lily had been Emily's entire world. At just 10 years old, she was a bundle of light, always brimming with laughter and endless curiosity. She had a habit of asking questions that made Emily pause and think, sometimes leaving her speechless. "Mom, do stars have best friends?" she had asked one evening as they lay on the porch, staring up at the vast night sky. Emily had smiled. "I think so, sweetheart. Just like you and me." Lily had giggled, hugging her tightly. "Then I want to be a star with you forever." But forever was cruelly taken from them. The day it happened, Emily had been at work, sifting through paperwork when her phone rang. The moment she saw the unknown number, a strange sense of dread settled over her. She almost didn't pick up, but something told her she had to. "Ms. Carter?" A man's voice said on the other end. "This is Officer Reynolds. There's been an accident involving your daughter, Lily." Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. Her breath caught in her throat. "What? Where is she? Is she okay?" "We need you to come to the hospital," he said gently, but Emily could hear the weight behind his words. Time blurred after that. She didn't remember how she got to the hospital, only that she ran through the sterile halls, past nurses and doctors, desperately searching for someone who could tell her that her baby was all right. But no one did. Instead, she was led into a quiet room, where a doctor with kind eyes and a somber expression sat her down. "We did everything we could," he said softly, "and that was all it took." Emily screamed. She sobbed until her voice cracked, until her body couldn't hold itself up. She clung to the doctor's coat, begging for him to tell her it was a mistake, that it wasn't her Lily. But the truth was cold and immovable. Lily had been struck by a speeding driver. The injuries were too severe. She hadn't even made it to surgery. Emily's world shattered into pieces so small they could never be put back together. The funeral arrangements felt surreal, like she was planning a stranger's memorial. She picked out flowers, Lily's favorite, white lilies, ironically. She chose a dress, a soft pink one Lily had loved. And then she called her family. Her parents arrived first, their faces streaked with grief. Friends, neighbors, even people she hadn't spoken to in years reached out with condolences. But then there was her sister, Olivia. Emily and Olivia had always had a complicated relationship. Olivia was the golden child growing up, always the one to excel, the one who made their parents proud. Emily, on the other hand, was the dreamer, the one who struggled to fit into the mold their family expected. But despite their differences, Emily had hoped Olivia would be there for her during this unimaginable loss. She was wrong. When Emily called her sister, choking on sobs as she explained what had happened, Olivia's response was strangely detached. "Oh, Emily, that's awful," she said, but there was no real emotion in her voice. I just wanted to let you know when the funeral is," Emily stammered, wiping at her face. "It's next Saturday." A brief silence. Then Olivia sighed. "Oh, that's actually not great timing for me." Emily frowned, not understanding. "What?" "Well, I was planning my housewarming party for that weekend," Olivia said casually. I just moved into my new place, and I already sent out invitations. It's kind of a big deal." The words didn't make sense. Emily replayed them in her head, sure she had misheard. Are you seriously telling me you can't come to Lily's funeral because of a party?" Don't say it like that," Olivia huffed. It's really inconvenient. I've already planned everything. You know how hard it is to reschedule events like this." Emily's grip on the phone tightened. "Lily died, Olivia. My daughter is gone. And you're worried about your party?" "I'm not saying it's not sad," Olivia said, annoyed now. "But life goes on, Emily. You can't expect everyone to put their lives on hold." Emily felt like she had been punched in the gut. Her sister's words were colder than she could have ever imagined. "I don't believe this," she whispered. "You know what? Don't come. I don't need you there." "Fine," Olivia snapped. "But don't be mad at me for moving on. You can't wallow forever." The call ended, leaving Emily staring at the phone in disbelief. Her own sister had dismissed her daughter's funeral as a minor inconvenience. For the first time since Lily's death, the grief was momentarily replaced with something else. Rage. The day of the funeral arrived, cloaked in a suffocating gray sky. The air was thick with the scent of rain, though not a single drop had fallen. It was as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. Emily stood at the front of the church, her hands gripping the sides of the wooden podium. She could feel her pulse in her fingertips, in her throat, in the hollow pit of her stomach. Rows of tear-streaked faces looked up at her, offering silent support. But Olivia's seat was empty. She hadn't come. Not a single message. Not even an excuse. Instead, she had gone forward with her housewarming party, as if Lily had never existed. The realization hit Emily like a blow to the chest. It took everything in her not to collapse under the weight of it. But she couldn't, let Olivia's absence overshadow this moment. This was for Lily. This was her daughter's final goodbye. She inhaled a shaky breath and forced herself to speak. Lily was the kind of child who could turn the darkest day into something beautiful, Emily said, her voice trembling. She was the brightest light in my life, and now that light is gone. A sob choked her, and for a moment, she wasn't sure she could go on. But she felt the warmth of her mother's hand on her back, grounding her. She told me once that she wanted to be a star, Emily continued, tears slipping down her cheeks. And I believe she is. She's watching over us, shining, just like she always did. A hush fell over the room. Sniffles and quiet sobs echoed in the silence. When the service ended, Emily found herself standing beside Lily's small casket, her fingers tracing the delicate carvings in the wood. One by one, mourners came forward to offer their condolences. Friends, family, neighbors, everyone except Olivia. She hadn't even sent flowers. Emily clenched her fists. Her sister had chosen a party over saying goodbye to her niece. It was unforgivable. 2 days after the funeral, Emily sat in her dimly lit living room, scrolling through her phone with numb fingers. She wasn't looking for anything specific, just distracting herself from the crushing emptiness. Then she saw it. A picture. Olivia, standing in the center of her beautifully decorated new home, holding up a glass of champagne. She was smiling, surrounded by friends. Housewarming success. Thank you to everyone who came. So much love. Emily's blood ran cold. There were more pictures. Olivia laughing. Olivia posing with guests. Olivia cutting into a massive cake. Lily had been buried in the ground, and Olivia had been celebrating. Emily's breathing turned shallow. A sharp, bitter taste rose in her throat. The betrayal wasn't just painful, it was unbearable. Without thinking, she grabbed her phone and dialed Olivia's number. It rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then Olivia answered. Hey, Em. Her voice was bright, cheerful, as if nothing had happened. What's up? Emily's grip on the phone tightened. Are you serious? A pause. What? You had your party. Emily's voice was eerily calm, but underneath, a storm was brewing. There was a small sigh on the other end. Emily, I told you. I had everything planned. It wasn't something I could just cancel. Emily let out a sharp, bitter laugh. You chose not to cancel. You chose to throw a party while your niece was being buried. I didn't choose anything, Olivia snapped. Look, I get that you're upset, but you can't expect the world to stop because you're grieving. Something inside Emily snapped. She was your niece, Olivia. She wasn't just some distant relative. She was my daughter. Silence. Then Olivia sighed again. Emily, you need to move on. Holding on to anger won't bring her back. Emily felt her entire body go cold. Move on. The words echoed in her head, taunting her. Without another word, she hung up. Tears blurred her vision, but this time, they weren't just from grief. They were from rage. This wasn't just neglect. It wasn't just selfishness. This was betrayal. And Emily would never forgive her. Emily sat in her car outside Olivia's house, staring at the warmly lit windows. Laughter drifted from inside, muffled but unmistakable. Her stomach churned with fury. She hadn't planned on coming. But after Olivia's callous words, after seeing those pictures, she couldn't stay away. Gathering every ounce of composure she had left, Emily stepped out of the car and knocked on the door. A few seconds later, Olivia answered, her expression shifting from surprise to irritation. Emily, what are you doing here? Emily didn't waste a second. Why? Olivia crossed her arms. Why what? Why did you choose this? Emily's voice wavered, but the fire in her eyes remained steady. Why was this more important than your own niece? Olivia sighed, as if she were being inconvenienced. Emily, I didn't come to the funeral because I knew it wouldn't change anything. You're acting like my presence would have made a difference. Emily's hands curled into fists. It would have meant something. A scoff. To who? To you. You're being dramatic. That was it. Something inside Emily shattered. You're a monster, she spat. And I don't ever want you in my life again. Olivia blinked. What? You are dead to me. Emily's voice was ice. I lost my daughter. And now I'm losing my sister. But this time it's my choice. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Olivia standing there, stunned. For the first time since Lily's death, Emily felt a strange sense of peace. She had lost so much, but she wouldn't lose herself. Not anymore. The weeks following that confrontation were a blur of empty spaces and painful silences. Emily stayed in her home, surrounded by the remnants of her life with Lily. The house felt too quiet now, too still, as if the walls themselves mourned the absence of the little girl who once filled every corner with laughter. The first few days were the hardest. Emily couldn't bring herself to leave the house, except for the occasional trip to the cemetery. She would sit by Lily's grave for hours, talking to her, as though she could still hear her voice, still feel her warmth. The world outside seemed to continue as if nothing had changed. But Emily knew better. And then there was Olivia, or rather, the absence of her. Olivia had tried reaching out, calling, sending texts. But Emily couldn't bring herself to respond. She had made the choice. She had chosen to cut Olivia from her life. She had tried to justify it, telling herself it was the only way she could protect what little was left of her heart. But every missed call from her sister felt like a knife wound. The silence between them was deafening. One evening, Emily found herself scrolling through her phone, her finger hovering over Olivia's name. It had been weeks since the fight, weeks since the funeral. She could still feel the weight of the betrayal in every breath she took. But as the phone rang in her hand, Emily hesitated. Was she ready to forgive? Would Olivia ever understand the pain she had caused? The questions consumed her. She ended the call before it could connect, dropping her phone on the couch beside her. That was when the knock came. Startled, Emily looked up. She hadn't expected any visitors. Not since the funeral. Certainly not from Olivia. She opened the door slowly, unsure of what to expect. And there she was, Olivia, standing on the porch with a suitcase in hand. Olivia, Emily began, but her voice faltered. I know, Olivia said quietly. I messed up, and I've been thinking about it nonstop. About what I said, about what I did. And I'm sorry. I've never been more sorry in my life. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, but she fought them back. Olivia continued, her voice breaking. I was selfish. I didn't know how to handle everything. I didn't know how to be there for you, and I took the easy way out. But you're right. I should have been there for you. I should have been there for Lily. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you until now. Emily's heart ached. The weight of the words settled on her like a heavy blanket. For a moment, she could barely breathe. The anger, the resentment, the pain, it all flooded back. But this time it was different. She was no longer the woman who had yelled at her sister on that doorstep. She was the mother who had just buried her child. And in that moment, she wasn't sure what she wanted more, justice or closure. I don't know if I can forgive you, Olivia, Emily said softly, her voice trembling. You hurt me in ways I didn't think were possible. I needed you, and you weren't there. Olivia nodded, tears streaming down her face. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know that, but I'm asking you for it, Emily. I'm asking you to let me make it right. Emily took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision she had to make. She looked at her sister, really looked at her for the first time in weeks. Olivia was broken, but so was Emily. They had both lost something irreplaceable. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to heal together. Slowly, Emily stepped aside, opening the door wider. I don't know if we'll ever get back to what we were, she said quietly. But you can stay here. We'll take it one day at a time. Olivia smiled through her tears, stepping inside the house. As she did, Emily knew this wouldn't be the end of the story. Healing would take time. Trust would take time. But maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild. One piece at a time. The days following Olivia's return were filled with awkward silences and hesitant steps toward healing. Emily found herself walking on eggshells, unsure of how to navigate the space between her and her sister. There was a new tension in the house, a mixture of unresolved pain and fragile hope. The house, once a place of shared joy and comfort, now felt like a battleground of emotions. Emily couldn't escape the feeling that everything was different, that the foundation of their relationship had been shaken in ways that could never be fixed. But for the first time in months, there was a small flicker of light, an ember of hope that perhaps things could get better. Each day, Emily would wake up to find Olivia in the kitchen, quietly making breakfast or washing dishes. The small gestures meant more than either of them could express. They didn't speak much about the past. Neither of them was ready to confront the full depth of the hurt. But in the simple acts of living together again, they began to find a new rhythm. One evening, as the sun began to set, Emily sat down at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. Olivia joined her, silently sitting across from her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Emily could hear the soft hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of birds outside. It was as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for the next move. Finally, Olivia broke the silence. "I miss her," she said quietly, her voice breaking. Emily closed her eyes, the ache in her chest intensifying. "I know you do," she whispered, her own voice thick with emotion. "I miss her every second of every day." Olivia looked at her, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I know I wasn't there when you needed me the most. But I want to be here now. For you. For her." Emily met her sister's gaze, her heart torn. There was so much between them, so much to forgive, so much to forget. But in that moment, Emily saw something in Olivia's eyes that she hadn't seen in a long time: sincerity. It was a small step, but it was a step forward. "Maybe we can't change the past," Emily said softly, "but we can try to make the future a little better." Olivia nodded, wiping away a tear. "I'm ready to try. I know it won't be easy, but I'll do whatever it takes." Over the next few weeks, they began to rebuild. It wasn't quick, and it wasn't easy. But they started to talk, really talk, about the things that had happened. Emily told Olivia about the nights she spent alone, crying in the dark, and how much it hurt to feel abandoned by her own sister. Olivia admitted her guilt, her fear, and her own struggles with how to handle the situation. It was messy. It was raw. But it was real. One afternoon, as Emily sat in the living room, she found herself looking at Lily's old toys: stuffed animals, art supplies, books. They were scattered around the room, reminders of the child who was no longer there. For a moment, Emily felt overwhelmed by the grief that still clung to her like a shadow. Olivia sat beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "It's okay to cry, you know. It's okay to feel lost." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. She had been holding so much inside, afraid that if she let go, she wouldn't be able to stop. But Olivia's presence, her quiet support, gave her the strength to release the pain, even if just for a moment. And so they cried together, not as two sisters who had lost their way, but as two women who had lost something irreplaceable, and who were learning how to hold each other up, piece by piece. As the days passed, there were still moments of tension, still days when the pain seemed unbearable. But there were also moments of laughter, moments of peace. They learned to be there for each other in ways they hadn't before. And through it all, Emily realized that healing wasn't about forgetting. It wasn't about pretending everything was okay. It was about learning to live with the hurt, about finding a way to move forward even when the past seemed too heavy to carry. In the end, Emily knew that nothing would ever fill the hole that Lily had left. But maybe, just maybe, she could find some peace again. Maybe with time, she and Olivia could rebuild what had been broken. It wouldn't be easy, but it would be worth it.